High Admiral Zena Val of the Aetherian Empire stood aboard the bridge of the Stellar Decree, her iridescent scales reflecting the soft blue glow of the holographic displays surrounding her command post. The massive dreadnought, stretching nearly 20 kilometers from bow to stern, held position at the edge of a seemingly unremarkable solar system. But something about this system, particularly its third planet, had caught the Empire's attention in a way none had before. "Display the anomaly readings again," she commanded, her secondary eyes focusing on the tactical data, while her primary set remained fixed on the beautiful blue-green world spinning slowly in the main view screen. The holographic displays shimmered as they showed the energy signatures that had originally drawn the Empire to this backwater system. The readings made no sense. The civilization on the planet below was clearly pre-FTL, yet their energy emissions showed patterns that suggested technological advancement far beyond their apparent development stage. It was as if they were deliberately masking their true capabilities. But that was impossible. No species had ever successfully hidden their technological level from the Empire's sensors. High Admiral, her second-in-command, Sub-Commander Rax, approached with a data crystal in his hand. "The preliminary scout reports are ready. The species calls themselves humans. They appear to be in a fascinating stage of development. They've barely established colonies on their moon and nearest planet, yet they're producing energy signatures that suggest quantum computing capabilities." Zena's facial ridges tightened, the Aetherian equivalent of a frown. "That's not possible. Rax. No species develops quantum computing before achieving FTL travel. The energy requirements alone." "Nevertheless, the readings are consistent across all our sensor arrays," Rax insisted. "There's something else. Their information networks are unusual. They appear to be deliberately inefficient, with multiple redundant systems and archaic transmission methods operating alongside much more advanced communications technology." Zena moved to the tactical station, her long fingers dancing across the control surfaces. The holographic display shifted, showing a comprehensive view of Earth's orbital space. It was cluttered with satellites, primitive by Imperial standards, but far more numerous than a pre-FTL civilization should need. "Look at this." She pointed to a cluster of particularly old satellites. These should have been replaced centuries ago by their technological timeline, yet they maintain them. Why waste resources keeping obsolete technology operational? Perhaps they're sentimental, Rax suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't believe it himself. "No." Zena's primary eyes narrowed. "They're hiding something. Initiate the standard first contact protocols, but have the fleet maintain high alert status. Something about these humans doesn't follow the normal patterns." As the massive Aetherian fleet began its approach to Earth, humanity was already well aware of their presence. Deep within Cheyenne Mountain, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her presentation showing the detailed analysis of the alien fleet that had appeared at the edge of their solar system. "As you can see," she pointed to the energy signature readings, "their attempt at stealth observation was detected by our quantum sensor network the moment they arrived. Their technology is impressive, but it's also predictable. They're relying entirely on energy-based cloaking systems, with no consideration for quantum detection methods." General Marcus Rodriguez, the gruff commander of Earth's combined military forces, leaned forward. "So our preparations worked. They really can't detect our true capabilities." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Better than we hoped, General. The distributed quantum computing network, hidden within our seemingly primitive satellite system, has been analyzing their technology since they arrived. We're already developing countermeasures to their most advanced systems, and they have no idea," Rodriguez mused, "that every obsolete satellite they've dismissed is actually part of our defense grid. That every inefficient communication system is a redundancy we built specifically for this moment." "Humanity's greatest advantage," Sarah agreed, "has always been our ability to learn from our own imagination. 100 years of science fiction prepared us for this moment. While other species develop their technology in a straight line, We explored every possible path simultaneously. We built our entire civilization like a chess player thinking 5 moves ahead. The room's main display suddenly lit up with an alert. The alien fleet was moving into position for what their analysis suggested would be a standard first contact protocol. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, one of the technicians announced. Standard radio, digital, and even some quantum bands. Message incoming. The message that played through the command center speakers was both awe-inspiring and amusing in its arrogance. The Aetherian Empire, speaking in flawless English, thanks to their advanced translation systems, proclaimed their dominion over 1,000 galaxies and their benevolent intention to elevate humanity into their empire. Shall we show them our response? Rodriguez asked, looking to the council for approval. The council's chairwoman, Dr. Helena Martinez, nodded slowly. Activate the quantum mesh. Let's show the Aetherian Empire why they should have looked more closely at those primitive satellites. Across Earth's orbit, thousands of seemingly obsolete satellites simultaneously revealed their true nature. Quantum fields flickered into existence, creating an interlocking defensive grid that humanity had spent the last century building in plain sight. Aboard the Stellar Decree, alarms suddenly blared as their sensors detected the massive energy spike around Earth. High Admiral Zena watched in shock as her supposedly superior sensors simply ceased functioning, blocked by technology that shouldn't exist on a pre-FTL world. Impossible, she whispered, as the realization dawned that the Aetherian Empire had made a grave miscalculation. These humans hadn't been hiding their technology. They had been building something entirely different from anything the Empire had ever seen. The first shots of the war were about to be fired, and for the first time in its long history, the Aetherian Empire was not prepared for what was coming. Aetherian fleet's advanced sensors had gone dark, but High Admiral Zena Val refused to show fear. Her species had conquered worlds for millennia. Surely these pre-FTL humans couldn't pose a real threat. Yet, as she watched the strange energy pattern emanating from Earth's orbit, a creeping doubt began to form in her mind. "Launch the containment fleet," she ordered, her voice steady despite her growing unease. "Standard subjugation pattern. Let's show these humans the difference between clever tricks and real power." 1,000 smaller vessels detached from the massive Aetherian warships, their crystalline hulls gleaming in the sunlight as they formed up into perfect attack formations. The Empire's battle doctrine had been refined over countless conquests, overwhelming force applied with mathematical precision. In Cheyenne Mountain, General Rodriguez watched the enemy's deployment with growing satisfaction. "They're following standard military doctrine to the letter," he noted, turning to Dr. Chen. "Just like all our simulations predicted." Sarah nodded, her fingers flying across her quantum interface. Their entire civilization is built on the idea of perfection and superiority. They've never needed to adapt or improvise. Every victory has reinforced their belief in their own infallibility. "That changes today," Rodriguez said grimly. "Execute Operation Chaos Theory." Across Earth's orbit, the quantum mesh suddenly shifted. Instead of maintaining its uniform defensive screen, it began to fragment into thousands of smaller fields, each operating on slightly different frequencies. To the Aetherian sensors, it appeared as if Earth's defensive system was falling apart. "They're breaking formation," Sub-Commander Rax reported eagerly. "Their defensive grid is collapsing under our approach." Zena's secondary eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong. The humans' apparent technological sophistication didn't match this apparent amateur mistake. But before she could voice her concerns, the attack fleet had already entered the scattered field of quantum disturbances. That's when humanity revealed their true strategy. Each fragment of the quantum mesh began to resonate at random frequencies, creating a cascading wave of interference patterns. The perfectly organized Aetherian attack formations suddenly found themselves trapped in pockets of warped spacetime, their synchronized movements becoming their greatest weakness. "What's happening?" Rax demanded as reports flooded in. Ships were losing formation, their crystal hulls vibrating at dangerous frequencies as the quantum interference played havoc with their highly tuned systems. "They're using our own precision against us," Xena realized, horror creeping into her voice. "Each ship's crystal matrix is amplifying the effect on nearby vessels. Our entire attack pattern has become one giant resonance chamber." In the Defense Command Center, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "The Aetherians build their ships like perfect musical instruments. We just needed to find the right frequency to shatter them." The first crystalline hull cracked, its perfect structure unable to handle the chaotic quantum frequencies. Then another broke, and another. The Aetherian attack fleet's formation dissolved into chaos as ships began emergency maneuvers, each trying to escape the destructive resonance pattern. But humanity wasn't finished. From hidden bases on the Moon and Mars, electromagnetic pulse cannons powered up. These weren't the crude EMP weapons of the past. They were precision instruments designed to target the exact frequencies used by Aetherian power systems. "Final phase," Rodriguez commanded. "Show them why humanity never abandoned any technology that could give us an advantage." The pulse cannons fired, their effects magnified by the quantum interference field. Across the scattered Aetherian fleet, power systems began to fail. Ships that prided themselves on their technological superiority found themselves drifting in space, their crystal hulls cracked, and their advanced systems offline. Aboard the Stellar Decree, High Admiral Xena watched in disbelief as a third of her attack fleet was neutralized without a single traditional weapon being fired. These humans hadn't just prepared for alien contact. They had specifically designed their defenses to counter the very advantages the Empire relied upon. "Full retreat," she ordered, her pride warring with her tactical training. "Get our disabled ships out of there. And someone find a way to communicate through this quantum interference." But the humans weren't interested in communication yet. As the Aetherian fleet struggled to recover their stranded ships, Earth's orbital defense platforms revealed another surprise. Railguns, technology the Aetherians had abandoned centuries ago as primitive, began launching projectiles at precisely calculated trajectories. "Kinetic weapons," Rax scoffed, even as the first volley approached. "Their projectiles can't penetrate our remaining shields." His voice cut off as the primitive projectiles passed straight through the Aetherian energy shields. The quantum interference had created momentary gaps in their defenses, gaps that human targeting computers had calculated with perfect precision. "That's impossible," Rax whispered as ships began reporting devastating impacts. "How could they possibly calculate shield fluctuations in real time?" "Because," Xena replied, finally understanding the true scope of humanity's preparation, "they're not just using their visible technology. Every piece of equipment we dismissed as obsolete, every system we thought was inefficient, they're all part of one massive battle computer." On Earth, the Defense Council watched as the mighty Aetherian fleet fell into disarray. Their perfect formations shattered, their advanced technology neutralized by weapons they had considered beneath them. The invaders were facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that had spent centuries preparing specifically to fight them. "Send the message," Dr. Martinez ordered. "Let's see if they're ready to talk on equal terms." The war was far from over, but humanity had achieved something unprecedented. They had fought the Aetherian Empire to a standstill without losing a single ship, and in doing so, they had shattered the Empire's most fundamental belief, their technological superiority. The real question now was, how would an empire built on the assumption of its own perfection handle its first taste of defeat? The captured Aetherian vessel hung suspended in the massive underground facility beneath the Nevada desert. Its crystalline hull, though cracked, still caught the light in mesmerizing patterns. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before it, surrounded by a team of Earth's brightest engineers and scientists, all working to unlock the secrets of alien technology that had, until recently, been considered invincible. "The crystalline structure isn't just their building material," she explained to the assembled team, pointing to the latest quantum scan results. "It's a living computer network. Every ship is essentially one giant quantum processor, which is exactly why they were so vulnerable to our resonance attacks, added Dr. James Wong, the head of Earth's quantum computing division. They designed their entire civilization around the idea of perfect crystalline harmony. They never conceived that anyone would weaponize discord. Above them, through kilometers of hardened bunkers and security checkpoints, the war continued. The Aetherian Empire had returned with a larger fleet, but their attacks had lost the pristine confidence of their first assault. They were learning, adapting. But so was humanity. In high orbit, Captain Maya Patel stood on the bridge of the EDS Prometheus, Earth's first starship built with hybrid human-Aetherian technology. The vessel represented humanity's approach to warfare. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't elegant, but it was incredibly effective. Power readings are stable, her engineering chief reported. The crystal matrix is successfully interfacing with our quantum systems, though I still say it's crazy to use both technologies simultaneously. Maya smiled. Crazy is what we do best. The Aetherians build their ships to be perfect. We build ours to be unpredictable. The Prometheus's hull was a patchwork of materials. Traditional metals, advanced composites, and salvaged Aetherian crystals. Where the Aetherians sought perfection and unity, humanity had embraced the chaos of diversity. Each system was redundant, backed up by completely different technologies operating on different principles. In the Aetherian fleet, High Admiral Zena Val watched the sensor readings of this new human vessel with growing concern. Their design makes no sense, she muttered. They're mixing technologies that should tear each other apart. Perhaps that's the point, Rax suggested. His once pristine uniform now showed signs of wear, matching the increasing strain on the entire Imperial fleet. Everything they do defies conventional logic, yet somehow it works. The latest battle began like the others. The Aetherians attacking with sophisticated energy weapons, humanity responding with their impossible mix of technologies. But this time, something was different. The human ships were no longer just defending. The Prometheus led the charge, its hybrid systems allowing it to predict and counter Aetherian tactics while employing strategies the Empire had never seen. Where Aetherian ships moved in perfect formation, human vessels seemed to operate in controlled chaos, each ship fighting in its own unique way while somehow maintaining cohesion as a fleet. Back in the Nevada facility, Sarah and her team watched the battle data streaming in. They're finally starting to understand, she noted, as the Aetherian fleet attempted to break up their formations, trying to become less predictable. Too late, James replied. They're trying to copy our apparent chaos, but they don't understand the underlying principles. Their entire civilization is built on the idea of perfect order. They can't just decide to embrace chaos overnight. The battle above proved his point. As the Aetherian ships attempted to fight more like humans, their perfectly calibrated systems began to show signs of stress. Crystal matrices designed for harmony began to fracture under the strain of attempting tactical disorder. In the command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain, General Rodriguez watched with grim satisfaction as the enemy fleet's performance deteriorated. They're trying to fight like us without understanding why we fight the way we do, he observed. Their entire society is built on the assumption of superiority through perfection. They've never had to adapt to being the underdogs. Dr. Martinez nodded. And that's why they can't win this war. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our strategies. It's our experience with failure, our ability to learn from defeat, our willingness to embrace imperfection in pursuit of progress. The Prometheus demonstrated this philosophy as it engaged the Aetherian flagship. Its hybrid systems weren't as powerful as pure Aetherian technology, weren't as refined as their crystalline computers, but they were flexible, adaptable, and most importantly, unpredictable. High Admiral Zena watched in growing horror as her fleet's formations continued to break down. How? She demanded. How can they be defeating us with inferior technology? Because it's not inferior, Rax replied, his voice heavy with realization. It's different. They took our technology, and instead of trying to perfect it, they deliberately made it imperfect, made it work with their existing systems in ways we never imagined possible. The battle reached its climax as the Prometheus executed a maneuver that should have torn any ship apart, diving through its own quantum interference field while firing salvos of both energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. The Aetherian flagship's perfect defenses, designed to counter either type of attack, couldn't adapt to both simultaneously. As warning alerts blared across her bridge, High Admiral Zena finally understood the true lesson humanity was teaching the Empire. Perfection, pursued single-mindedly, had become their greatest weakness. The humans, with their messy, redundant, inefficient systems, had created something far more powerful than perfection: adaptability. The battle ended not with a decisive victory, but with another strategic withdrawal by the Aetherian fleet. Yet something fundamental had changed. For the first time in its history, the Empire was being forced to question its most basic assumptions about technology, warfare, and progress. In the Nevada facility, Sarah walked along the length of the captured Aetherian ship one more time. "We're not just reverse engineering their technology," she said to her team. "We're reverse engineering their entire approach to civilization, and in doing so, we might just save them from their own perfection." The first human fleet to enter Aetherian space didn't arrive with a thunderous announcement or dramatic faster-than-light burst. Instead, 50 ships simply appeared within striking distance of the Empire's primary shipyard at Helios Prime, their hybrid drives allowing them to slip through gaps in space that the Aetherians' perfect but rigid scanning systems had never thought to monitor. Admiral Maya Patel, now commanding the entire offensive fleet from the enhanced Prometheus, allowed herself a small smile as she watched the Aetherian defense grid continue its regular sweep, completely oblivious to humanity's presence. The Empire's reliance on standardized, predictable systems had made their security frighteningly easy to bypass. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer announced. "Hybrid systems are synchronized, and the quantum interference grid is charged." Maya nodded, her expression becoming serious. "Send the signal. Let's show the Empire why they should have studied Earth's history more carefully." Throughout human history, every major military advance had come from someone finding a way to counter the dominant technology of their era. Castles fell to cannons, battleships fell to aircraft, and now the Empire's perfect defenses would fall to humanity's deliberate imperfection. The human fleet struck simultaneously at multiple points across the massive shipyard complex. Ships that appeared to be simple frigates suddenly split apart, revealing they were actually carrier vessels housing swarms of smaller craft. Each of these craft operated on different technological principles, presenting the Aetherian defense systems with too many varied threats to counter effectively. In the shipyard's command center, System Director Kale rushed to respond to the sudden attack. "Impossible," he shouted as reports flooded in. "How did they get past our sensor grid? Where did they come from?" His subordinates had no answers. The Aetherian military, for all its power and technological sophistication, had never developed protocols for dealing with an enemy that could appear inside their defenses. Such a thing had always been deemed impossible by their perfect systems. "They're not using standard FTL drives," one of his analysts reported, voice shaking. "Their propulsion signatures don't match anything in our database. It's as if they're sliding between the frequencies our sensors monitor." Back on the Prometheus, Maya watched as the carefully orchestrated attack unfolded. While the Aetherians scrambled to respond to the swarm of small attack craft, larger human vessels moved into position around the shipyard's main power generators. "Phase 2, she ordered. "Let's show them what we learned from their crystalline technology." The human ships activated devices that looked crude compared to Aetherian technology, hastily manufactured copies of their crystal matrices, deliberately flawed and operating far outside their intended parameters. But these imperfect copies achieved something the Empire had never imagined possible. They created discordant resonances that interfered with the shipyard's perfect crystalline structure. In the Empire's capital, High Admiral Zenner received the distress calls from Helios Prime with growing horror. The humans weren't just attacking the shipyard. They were unraveling the very technological foundations that the Empire had built itself upon. "Launch the home fleet," she commanded. "All of it. We have to contain this before." But it was already too late. The humans had learned from every encounter, adapted their tactics, and prepared for this moment. As the Imperial home fleet began to mobilize, they discovered that the attack on Helios Prime was just the beginning. Across Aetherian space, more human fleets emerged from their impossible spaces between sensor frequencies. Each fleet used different tactics, different technologies, presenting the Empire's forces with an ever-changing array of threats that defied their standardized response protocols. Dr. Sarah Chen, now serving as the fleet's chief scientific advisor aboard the Prometheus, monitored the battle data with intense focus. "Their response times are dropping," she reported. "Their command structure isn't designed to handle this many simultaneous variables." Maya nodded grimly. An empire that's never faced real opposition doesn't develop the flexibility to handle unexpected threats. "How long until the quantum cascade reaches critical?" 3 minutes, Sarah replied. "Their attempts to reinforce their crystal matrices are actually making them more vulnerable. They're trying to solve chaos with more perfect order." The quantum cascade effect spread through the shipyard's crystalline structure like cracks through ice. The Aetherian defenders watched in helpless horror as their most advanced ships, still under construction, began to shatter in their docks. System Director Kale stared at his failing systems in disbelief. "Stop trying to restore standard configurations," he shouted at his engineers. "The humans are using our own synchronization protocols against us. We need to. But he couldn't finish the thought. The very idea of deliberately introducing imperfection into their systems was so alien to Aetherian thinking that he couldn't even formulate the concept. The battle for Helios Prime ended not with a dramatic explosion, but with the quiet death of perfect order. The shipyard's crystal matrix collapsed completely, its structure torn apart by the very harmonics it was designed to maintain. The facility, pride of the Empire's industrial might, hung in space as little more than an ornate collection of expensive debris. Maya stood on her bridge, watching the aftermath of humanity's first major offensive action against the Empire. "Send the message," she ordered. "The same one to all Imperial frequencies. Throughout Aetherian space, on every communication channel, the human fleet broadcast their terms. Your perfection is your weakness. Your unwillingness to embrace change, to learn from failure, to adapt to the unexpected. These are the flaws that will doom your empire. But it doesn't have to end this way. We offer you a choice. Learn to accept imperfection, to value adaptation over rigid adherence to outdated ideals, or watch as your perfect empire crumbles in the face of chaos you never prepared for." In the Imperial capital, High Admiral Zenna listened to the message with a new understanding. The humans hadn't just defeated their military. They had exposed the fundamental flaw in Aetherian civilization itself. The question now was whether an empire built on the idea of perfection could learn to embrace the power of imperfection before it was too late. 1 year after the Battle of Helios Prime, the crystalline spires of the Imperial capital glittered differently. Interwoven among the perfect geometric patterns were new structures, some human in design, others representing a hybrid architecture that would have been unthinkable before the war. The changes weren't just cosmetic. They represented a fundamental shift in how the Aetherian Empire viewed the universe. In the newly established Joint Species Council chamber, High Admiral Zenna Val stood before representatives of both humanity and the Empire. Her once pristine uniform now incorporated elements of human military dress, a symbolic acknowledgement of the changes her civilization had undergone. "The war taught us something we have forgotten in our pursuit of perfection," she addressed the assembly. "True strength lies not in achieving perfection, but in the ability to adapt, to change, to learn from those we once considered inferior." Dr. Sarah Chen sat among the human delegation, her attention split between Zenna's speech and the data streaming across her tablet. The integration of human and Etherian technology had progressed faster than anyone had expected, producing innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Our greatest mistake, Xena continued, wasn't in underestimating humanity's military capabilities. It was in failing to understand that their seeming chaos, their redundant systems, their willingness to embrace imperfection, these were not weaknesses, but the source of their greatest strength. The chamber's holographic displays showed scenes from across former Imperial space. Aetherian ships now incorporated human design elements, sacrificing some of their crystalline perfection for greater adaptability. Human vessels, in turn, had adopted refined versions of Aetherian technology, finding a balance between efficiency and flexibility. Admiral Maya Patel, now serving as humanity's military liaison to the Empire, watched with satisfaction. The war had changed both species. Humans had learned to appreciate the benefits of Aetherian precision, while the Aetherians had discovered the value of human unpredictability. The discovery of Earth, Xena acknowledged, marked not the end of our empire, but its rebirth. We had grown stagnant in our perfection, blind to the possibility that different paths of development could lead to equal or greater achievements. In orbit above the capital, the Prometheus held station alongside an Aetherian dreadnought. The two ships could not have looked more different, one a deliberate mixture of technologies and materials, the other a marvel of crystalline engineering. Yet they represented the same fundamental truth. There was strength in diversity. Dr. Helena Martinez, speaking for Earth's delegation, rose to address the assembly. The question was never whether humanity would join the galactic community, she said, but whether the galactic community was ready for humanity. Our victory in the war proved not our superiority, but the importance of maintaining multiple approaches to solving problems. The effects of the human-Aetherian war had rippled across the galaxy. Other spacefaring races, long dominated by the Empire's technological orthodoxy, began to experiment with alternative approaches to development. The rigid hierarchy of galactic civilization gave way to a more dynamic, adaptable order. But our greatest challenge lies ahead, Martins continued. There are more species out there, following their own paths of development. Our task now is to ensure that first contact with these civilizations doesn't repeat our mistakes. The Joint Species Council had already begun implementing new protocols for encountering developing civilizations. No longer would technological advancement be measured on a single linear scale. Instead, each species' unique approach to development would be recognized and valued. In the rear of the chamber, General Rodriguez sat with Sub-Commander Rax, the two former enemies now working together to reshape military doctrine for both species. The funny thing, Rodriguez mused, is that we spent centuries preparing to fight aliens, but what we really did was prepare to teach them. Rax nodded, his perfect Aetherian posture now showing subtle signs of human influence. And we spent millennia believing we had nothing left to learn. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson. The moment you believe you have achieved perfection is the moment you begin to stagnate. The assembly concluded with the signing of the Galactic Diversity Accord, a document that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. It formally recognized that technological advancement could follow many paths, and that true civilization meant maintaining the flexibility to learn from all of them. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Sarah found herself walking alongside Xena. The human scientist and the Aetherian admiral had become unlikely friends, their different perspectives leading to insights neither could have reached alone. Do you think we'll ever encounter another species that challenges us the way humanity challenged the Empire? Xena asked. Sarah smiled. I'm sure we will, but this time, we'll be ready to learn from them instead of trying to force them to learn from us. Above them, through the transparent crystal dome of the chamber, the stars shone brightly. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were developing along their own paths, making their own choices about how to advance. And when they finally reached for the stars, they would find not an empire built on enforced perfection, but a galactic community that had learned to value the strength found in diversity, adaptation, and the courage to embrace change. The war that began with humanity's defiance of imperial power had ended by transforming both species. The Aetherian Empire had learned that true strength lies not in achieving perfection, but in the willingness to evolve. And humanity had proven that their greatest contribution to galactic civilization was not their technology or their military might, but their fundamental understanding that progress comes not from following a single path to its end, but from exploring every possible path and learning from each one.